Hello, my name is Isaac Sexton, and this is my persuasive speech on why children should be taught a second language early on in life. Now, currently in the world, there are over 7,000 known languages. Now, language is extremely important to the world today, because without it, we wouldn't be able to do basically anything. Because it allows us to communicate with others and the people around us, and sort of allows us to interpret things and understand what people are trying to tell us. And it also determines it's a very big factor in a person's life, because a person's language sort of decides for them how they are able to communicate and who they are able to communicate with. Now, since there's so many languages in the world, obviously we can't go out and learn every single one, but it does help to know more than one. But the problem is, a lot of people, especially in America, there are a lot of people who don't know more than one language, since obviously a majority of the people are English speakers, but there are also a good amount of people in this country who speak other languages. For instance, Spanish. Spanish is a very popular language in America, and is the amount of people that speak it in this country is like always growing, from immigrants and just people who have descended from relatives who also speak Spanish, so they learn it too. But most schools nowadays don't really offer language programs until middle school or high school, which isn't good, because by that time it's a lot harder for us as humans to learn these new languages and keep them in our heads fresh. So it would help if we learned these languages earlier, because knowing a second language is something that can greatly help in the future, which is what I'm going to talk about today. So I'd like to start off with, why should we learn a language so early? The reason why is because us as humans begin to listen to other people and listen to the things around us as soon as we're born, basically. As soon as we're born, we use our ears and we listen to everything around us, and we try to understand what our parents and family who are around us are trying to say, so we can learn how to talk, which obviously is a big part in human development, is speaking. And what we hear around us determines how we talk and what language we talk in. And if we are around people around people early that only speak English, then we're only going to be hearing English. If we're only around one language, then that's all we're going to know. And so if we start early on and not wait late, we can get these languages in our heads, because there have been studies that shows that usually around age 11, the area in our brain known as the Broca's area, which is responsible for learning new languages and sort of understanding them, starts to not grow as rapidly as it did when we were much younger. So if we were to go ahead and start teaching the kids another language earlier on, then their brains are still listening to the sounds around us and interpreting them and try to understand them, so we can get in our head that this is something we should know, this language. And it would also be a lot easier to teach kids who are in early elementary school these new languages than it would be to teach somebody in middle school or high school, because elementary school kids are easier to teach. Because when a child is as young as 5 or 6 years old, then they only need to learn the basics of a language, which means you don't have to go into the very complex stuff that they need to know, because they're children. Even if they're mainly English speakers, they're not going to go know like everything about English. They only need to know the basics of English or whatever language that you want to teach them. And another thing, children who are very young don't have, they don't get as upset about learning things such as like if they're having difficulties learning something, they don't get upset about like not being able to do it. But like people that are preteens around that age have a harder time doing it because if they make a mistake, they're going to get upset at themselves and think that they're not going to be able to do it. But kids don't care if they make mistakes. They can just keep on going and keep on learning. So, next thing to talk about is how do we teach these new languages? Probably, depending on where you live, you could try to look around for daycares, preschools, normal elementary schools, depending on how old your kid is, and see if any of them offer programs to teach any other languages. And I would assume that a lot of schools in like city environments might, but I myself am from a small town and they didn't offer like stuff like that, so we had to wait until middle school or high school. But if you're like me and you're from a small town, they don't offer that. Then you could try to do something else, like try to find books, like children's books that have both English and another language that you want to speak, that you want your child to speak in, to get them started off. Or, for instance, try to find something on TV, like Dora is very popular. It's always been very popular. Let them watch that, and let them watch any other shows that you can find that help them learn and try to learn the basics of a language so they can understand it much better. Another thing, now that technology is sort of advancing, you could probably find on a phone or an iPad, whatever you want your child to use, try to find an app or a game that they could play to help them learn a language or some kind of program, such as Duolingo or AHA or stuff like that could easily just let them get on it for maybe an hour, however long you want them to, and sort of learn the basics of it. But yeah, that's how you can sort of get them into it. A big question is, why should we be letting our kids learn a second language? Like, how can this help them? The main obvious reason why is so that, say in life, if they know a second language and they're like out in the world, they're able to talk to somebody else who knows a second language. Like, say there's an elderly Hispanic man and you're out in a store and the elderly Hispanic man falls down and he's having some kind of health problem and he's trying to talk to you, but he only knows Spanish. If you only spoke English, you either have to try to figure out what he's pointing to or motioning to, whatever, or find somebody else who speaks Spanish. But if you already know it, you can just hurry up, get it done, make sure he's okay. And, it would just help us in that way. Another thing is there have been studies on people who are bilingual, who know two languages, and these studies have shown that because people who are bilingual, their brains are able to switch back and forth between these two languages, they're much better at switching back and forth between two different tasks that they might be able to do, which can help them in jobs and stuff like that. And with jobs is another thing that could help with, because there are much more job opportunities if you know a second language. For instance, if you're going to a job that's in like a business field, you could have Hispanic clients who only speak Spanish and be able to completely talk to them easily without needing a translator or something, so there are no mistakes or misinterpretations of what they said. And another thing later in life is that knowing a second language has sort of been proven to help delay the symptoms of diseases such as dementia as much as like 5 years, which is great. But in conclusion, I think that it would be great for everyone in the country to learn a second language, and it would help us out very much. Thank you.